Open up the door, it's Dave!
Who?
Dave! D-A-V-E!
Dave?
Right, man, Dave.
Dave's not here!
I'm here in Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm in a kind of an interesting space that has a little historical significance. It's right near Florida Atlantic University, and you can hear an airplane going overhead from the Boca Raton airport. But this area looks just like it did in the 1940s when it had a special purpose. Yes, this entire area was an airstrip. This is where they trained all of the pilots that were going to be flying bomber missions in Europe during World War II. It was kind of a secret airbase that was on South Florida. So this entire property right here was owned by the U.S. government, and all of the bomber pilots that went over to Europe were trained here. So they had B-17, B-24s, all these different aircraft flying in and out of here. This was a secret military installation, if you will. It was kind of interesting because I grew up in this area in the 1970s, and this was entirely an airstrip. We used to run on this airstrip for track and field. There was barracks still around. There was a lot of other things still around at that point in time, and it still looked very much like an airstrip. Now, this is the only section that still looks like an airstrip, and you can still see some of the stanchions and other things that they had put in place to hold the aircraft. But it's kind of an interesting place with a little historical perspective that I wanted to share with you. So let me tell you a little bit more about the story of what happened here and how this worked. There's some other interesting little nuggets and little things about Boca that are kind of historically significant and interesting. So I thought it's worth spending a couple of minutes and telling this story. So where is Boca Raton? It's on the southern part of Florida, about 40 miles north of Miami. It's an ideal location because it's over the water, and it allows pilots to train as though they're going over the English Channel or into Japan. So the city looks like this. It's actually arranged in this way, just to give you a sense of where it is and how big it is. It's a fairly large size now, but at the time that the World War II was going on, it had about 700 permanent residents. And the Army airfield came along and was built on this property that was this spit of land where they could use it to their advantage. The U.S. Army spent about $12 million and put about 100,000 people into about 5,800 acres where they built this airfield. So you can see the airfield on the left the way it was built in the 1940s. It's 3 runways and a long cross runway going around. On the right is what it looks like today with Florida Atlantic University using the same space. So when you kind of look at the two, you get a sense of how it fits together. In fact, if you really take a look at it kind of closely, you realize that the airstrip that's on the top left-hand corner of the original airfield is what's now the Boca Raton Municipal Airport. That's actually the landing strip for that. They arranged it a little differently. Of course, it's slightly different than it was, but essentially it's the same airstrip that it was before, and that is kind of cool on its own. Now, as we look at the property, we can see where I was standing is off to the top right-hand side of the screen. And the football field that FAU plays on is sort of below that, just to give you a sense of perspective on it. But it's amazing that this property still exists. Although it's sort of in spirit now, it's still there in Boca Raton, and it's kind of cool in its own weird way. Now, to give you a little more perspective, we'll take a look at Boca Raton and just give you a feel for how it lays out. If you look at Florida Atlantic University, you can see the airstrip there. That's the one we showed before. That's Boca Raton's municipal airport. And then as you look over to the left, you'll see something called North Military Trail. It was called Military Trail specifically because the Army Air Corps came in here and they were building up this property, and they wanted to make sure that they had the military going there. As I said, it was mostly them, and that's kind of what it came out to be. Now, in the 1960s, when Florida Atlantic University started to get built out, this is what it looked like, and you can still see the airstrips there. All 4 of them actually, are still there in the property. And funny enough, today, there are still some of the original barracks sitting on the property. Army Airfield was something that was really, really cool and really amazing and did win the war. Now, there's some kind of interesting videos I found, promotional videos that were online about the United States Navy training films. You know, I realize this is about the Navy and not about the Army Air Force, but it's still pretty cool because you get the sense of what happens here and how this all fits together. So when you look at this film, you can see that this was actually filmed in Boca Raton.
This is Fox 1. Rejoin formation immediately.
Here he comes now.
Now, while this airstrip was really important to the war mission, it was bigger than that. This property was also used for a very secret purpose, and it's the secret weapon that won World War II, if you will. That's the use of radar. They were improving on radar throughout the war, and by the end of the war, they had come up with something that was a really good radar detection system. And they were training radar detection at this airstrip. This is where they were doing most of the training for all of the Allies to learn how to use radar and the new radar very efficiently. So it's a really cool place that when you think about it, that it was much bigger than just the airstrip. Even though the airstrip represents what it was much more than that.
This scope is a map of the surrounding ocean with our plane in the center. See that dot? That's your sub. The technique is simple. The radarman sights the target, then guides the pilot in for the kill.
Churchill had a different attitude. It was, we can't do this by ourselves. We don't have time to worry about secrets.
Amongst the papers and plans of this highly secret mission was something that would forever change the course of the war, the cavity magnetron. Invented by two British scientists, this device greatly magnified the radar's signal and could track objects that early radar could never do.
This was a device that looked a lot like a clay pigeon used in skeet shooting. It could fit in the palm of a hand.
The importance of their work was not lost on them.
This was an important project. There wasn't any question about that at all. We were going to get this solved, and everybody was expected to pitch in and do it, and we were anxious to get this job done.
Screen giving X-ray-like vision to the mysterious 11th member of the crew, the radar operator. Until recently, we've known little of what he does, and even less about the instruments he uses. Basically, radar equipment consists of a radio transmitter and receiver. The transmitter sends a radio beam earthward. If it strikes water, the beam is not reflected. The receiver picks up nothing, and the scope appears dark, as it is now over the Pacific Ocean. But if the beam strikes a solid object, such as land, it's reflected and shows light on the scope. Watch. Something's coming in now at the upper left. Adjusting the receiver controls sharpens the picture. There they are. Two islands, both with mountains on them. That should make them easy to identify. According to the charts, only two islands of this shape and contour lie off the southern coast of Honshu. The little one, Kojima, the other, Hachijojima. Two tiny dots on the face of the globe point the way for a cargo of destruction.
Now, there is one other thing I'd like to talk about, and that's the disappearance of Flight 19. It's a very famous group of pilots who disappeared off the coast of Florida. They had actually taken off from Fort Lauderdale, but because of the advancements in radar, it's surprising that they disappeared the way they did. Now, people say, hey, they went in the Bermuda Triangle, but to be honest with you, people can't even define what the Bermuda Triangle is consistently, so it's hard to say what the Bermuda Triangle would be. So they didn't get lost in the Bermuda Triangle, contrary to popular belief. What happened was their guidance system went off, so they used an early compass, and the compass went out of whack, and they had a problem, and the lead pilot was directing everyone to go east, and the other pilots were saying, no, we need to go west to go back to land in Florida. Given the fact that the whole squadron disappeared and they still haven't found the planes to this day, it adds to the legend and the lore. But the amazing part to me is, with all of the work that was being done in radar, that these planes disappeared at all.
What's your point, David?